The shuttle's hull screamed as it tore through the atmosphere of planet-designated XR-749. Lieutenant Jake Morrison gripped his harness while the alien crew around him activated their emergency protective fields. Commander Veklis, a tall insectoid from the Zarn Collective, chittered frantically into the communication device as red warning lights flooded the cabin. The landing thrusters fired 3 times in rapid succession, each blast shaking the craft like a toy in angry hands. They hit ground hard. Metal groaned and something exploded in the rear compartment, sending acrid smoke through the ventilation system. Jake released his harness and moved toward the exit ramp before anyone else could react. Through the viewport, he saw why the aliens called this place Death World Category 9. The landscape stretched endlessly in shades of purple and black, with crystalline formations jutting from the ground like broken teeth. The sky churned with clouds that moved against the wind, and in the distance, something massive stirred between the rock formations. Veklis approached him, mandibles clicking nervously. The commander's translation device crackled to life. "Human Morrison, we must remain inside the shuttle. This world has consumed 43 survey teams. The atmospheric readings show toxins that will dissolve Zarn exoskeletons in less than 2 hours. The fauna here grows to unprecedented sizes and hunts in coordinated packs. We detected movement signatures surrounding our position even before we landed." Jake checked his rifle and moved to the exit controls. The other crew members, a mix of species from across the Galactic Council, backed away from him. They had seen humans before, but only in controlled environments, only in spaces where the universe made sense. A small being called Tresh, whose species resembled floating jellyfish, pulsed warning colors through its translucent body. "You cannot survive out there, Tresh," transmitted directly into Jake's mind through their telepathic link. "The gravity is twice what your Earth experiences. The predators here have acid for blood. The very soil releases spores that invade neural tissue. This is why we crashed. This is why no one returns from XR-749. Jake pulled on his helmet and pressurized his suit. The visor display showed him readouts that would terrify most species. Atmospheric pressure that could crush unprotected Zarn. Gravity that made movement exhausting for the lighter-framed aliens. Temperature fluctuations that swung from freezing to boiling within hours. Radiation levels that exceeded safety margins by factors of 10. He opened the exit ramp anyway. The atmosphere rushed in with a sound like hungry breathing. Outside, the nightmare landscape waited. Crystalline structures hummed with some kind of resonance that made his teeth ache. The purple vegetation moved independently of wind, reaching and grasping. Something roared in the distance, a sound that traveled through the ground itself. Jake walked down the ramp and stood on the alien soil. He tested his weight, adjusted to the gravity, and scanned the horizon through his rifle scope. Behind him, the alien crew watched in stunned silence as he turned back toward the shuttle. His voice came through their communication systems calm and level. "So where do you want me to set up camp? We've got maybe 6 hours of daylight left, and I'd rather have the perimeter secured before those things out there decide to visit." Veklis's mandibles froze mid-click. The concept seemed beyond comprehension. "Camp... Human Morrison, did you not hear the warnings? Did the translation fail? This world is classified as unsurvivable. No species has ever established a presence here. The geological surveys show seismic instability. The biological scans reveal organisms that defy our understanding of possible life forms." Jake knelt and drove a marker stake into the ground. "Yeah, I heard you." Sounds like Tuesday. "Now, are you going to help me unload the equipment, or are you going to stand there clicking?" The human began walking the perimeter, his boots leaving prints in the purple soil. Above him, something with wings that spanned 30 meters circled against the churning sky. It dove toward him, talons extended, moving faster than most atmospheric craft. Jake didn't run. He raised his rifle, calculated the trajectory, and fired 3 times. The creature spiraled away, screeching, dark blood trailing behind it. Inside the shuttle, the alien crew looked at each other with expressions that transcended language. Tresh pulsed a deep blue color that indicated profound confusion mixed with something that might have been hope. Veklis made a sound that the translator couldn't process, something between fear and wonder. The human was already marking out a defensive position. He moved with purpose across terrain that should have killed him in minutes. The gravity that would exhaust a Zarn seemed merely inconvenient. The atmospheric toxins that their sensors warned about continuously appeared to have no effect on him at all. When another creature, this one resembling a mass of writhing tentacles, emerged from beneath the crystalline formations, Jake eliminated it with precise shots and continued working. Commander Tresh transmitted to Veklis, "Perhaps we should assist him. If the human believes we can survive this place, perhaps there is information we lack about his species' capabilities." Veclis watched Jake through the viewport as the human dragged equipment from the shuttle's cargo bay. The commander had served in the Galactic Council fleet for 30 cycles. He had seen countless worlds and worked alongside dozens of species. But he had never seen anything quite like this. The humans were new to the galactic community, barely 50 cycles since first contact. They came from a world the Council had initially classified as Death World Category 7. Only 7 because Category 8 and above were considered too hostile for intelligent life to evolve. Yet here was Jake Morrison treating a Category 9 world like it was merely unpleasant. The human had already eliminated 3 apex predators without apparent concern. He moved through environment that killed other species as though it were mildly annoying weather, and now he was asking where to set up camp, as if staying here was not just possible but practical. Veclis made a decision that would change everything the Galactic Council understood about humanity. He activated the ship-wide communication system. All crew members prepare to assist human Morrison. We are establishing a base camp. If this human believes it can be done, then we will trust his judgment. Our survival may depend on it. The crew emerged slowly, hesitantly, onto the nightmare world. They watched Jake work, and something shifted in their understanding of the universe. The human wasn't stronger than them, wasn't faster, wasn't more intelligent. He was simply from a world so hostile that this place, with all its horrors, was just another challenge to overcome. And humanity had been overcoming challenges since before they could walk upright. Jake drove another stake into the ground and smiled beneath his helmet. Camp was going to be ready by nightfall. After that, they could figure out why the Council needed them on this rock in the first place. But first, shelter, then defenses, then maybe some sleep if those flying things in the distance decided to stay distant. It was going to be a long deployment, but he'd been through worse. Earth, after all, had prepared him for everything the galaxy could throw at him, even if the galaxy didn't know it yet. The nightmare world hummed and shifted around them. In the distance, something howled, and humanity began what it did best. It began to survive, to adapt, and ultimately to thrive where others could only fail. The crew watched and learned that death worlds produced a kind of life that didn't know how to quit. They were about to discover what humanity meant when they said a place was survivable. They just needed the right mindset, the right tools, and someone stubborn enough to refuse the universe's verdict. Jake Morrison was exactly that stubborn, and XR749 was about to learn what happened when Earth met the impossible. The camp took shape as the alien sun began its descent. Jake had positioned the primary shelter in the shadow of a massive crystalline formation, using the natural structure as a windbreak and potential defensive position. The crew had followed his instructions with growing confidence, though their movements remained cautious. Every sound made them flinch, every shadow made them reach for weapons. But Jake moved through the chaos like he was assembling furniture in his backyard, methodical and unhurried. Lieutenant Claire Bennett emerged from the shuttle carrying scanning equipment. She was the only other human in this expedition, assigned as xenobiology specialist. Her suit sensors blinked warnings about atmospheric contamination, toxic spores, and radiation exposure. She ignored them all and dropped the equipment beside Jake. "Please tell me you found something that won't try to eat us for dinner," she said. Jake pointed toward a cluster of rocks approximately 200 meters away. "There's a cave system over there. Thermal imaging shows it's stable and empty. We can use it for supply storage once I clear out whatever might be living in the back sections. The crystalline formations seem to interfere with the local predator's sensory organs. I've noticed they avoid getting too close to the larger structures." Claire activated her scanner and swept the area. The readings made her eyebrows rise. "Jake, these crystals are emitting some kind of electromagnetic pulse. It's irregular but constant. That might explain why our shuttle's navigation went haywire before we crashed. It's also probably why the predators stay clear. The pulse disrupts neural patterns. Can we use that?" Claire's mind was already working through possibilities. If we set up resonance amplifiers around the perimeter, we might be able to create a deterrent field. It won't stop everything, but it should make smaller predators think twice before approaching. The bigger ones, though, her voice trailed off as something massive moved in the distance. Those might need more convincing. The thing in the distance stood at least 15 meters tall. It moved on 6 legs, each one ending in claws that gouged the purple soil. Its head resembled a hammer, broad and flat with sensory organs that glowed faintly in the dimming light. As they watched, it smashed into a crystalline formation, shattering it with one blow. The electromagnetic pulse ceased instantly. The creature made a sound of satisfaction and began feeding on something that crawled from the broken crystal. Veclis approached the 2 humans. His translation device buzzed. "That is, Scorvath. They are apex predators on every world where they have been introduced. The Galactic Council believes they originated here on XR749. They hunt by destroying the electromagnetic sources that smaller creatures hide near. Then they consume everything that flees. We have no weapons that can penetrate their hide. Our records indicate they are virtually indestructible. Jake watched the Scorvath through the scope. How fast can they move? In short bursts, approximately 60 kilometers per hour. They are ambush predators, primarily, but they can sustain pursuit for extended periods. Why do you ask, Human Morrison? Because one of them is heading this way, and I need to know if we should relocate the camp or reinforce what we have. The Scorvath had indeed turned toward their position. It moved with deliberate steps, each footfall shaking the ground. The alien crew began backing toward the shuttle, but Jake held his position. Claire checked her rifle and moved to stand beside him. Veklis watched this display with his mandibles quivering. The humans were not fleeing. They were preparing to fight something that had killed entire military units. "Veklis," Jake said calmly, "get your crew into the shuttle. Seal the doors. If this goes badly, take off immediately. Don't wait for us." "We cannot simply abandon you," Veklis protested, even as his instincts screamed at him to do exactly that. "The Galactic Council has protocols. We do not leave crew members behind." Jake's voice carried an edge now. "Commander, with respect, your crew will die if they stay out here. Claire and I have training for this exact scenario. Let us do our job. If we fail, then you do yours and get these people somewhere safe." The Scorvath was closing the distance. 200 meters. 150. Its hammer-shaped head swung back and forth, sensory organs locked onto the camp. Claire activated her rifle's armor-piercing rounds. Jake pulled something from his equipment belt, a small device that looked deceptively simple. "What is that, Tresh transmitted from inside the shuttle?" "Humanity's answer to things that won't die from bullets," Jake replied. "Magnetic accelerator grenade. Experimental. Technically not approved for field use, definitely not something I'm supposed to have. But we're a long way from people who care about regulations." 100 meters. The Scorvath lowered its head and charged. The ground shook with each step. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of crystalline teeth that could shear through starship hull plating. Everything about the creature screamed unstoppable force. Everything except the two humans standing directly in its path. Jake waited until the Scorvath was 50 meters away. Then he threw the grenade. It sailed in a perfect arc and attached itself to the creature's head with a magnetic clamp. The Scorvath didn't even slow down. 40 meters. 30. Claire fired her rifle, the armor-piercing rounds sparking off the creature's hide. 20 meters. Jake pulled Claire backward and activated the grenade remotely. The explosion was contained, focused, and devastatingly effective. The magnetic accelerator compressed all its force into a singular point, drilling through the Scorvath's skull with the energy of a small artillery shell. The creature's charge continued for 3 more steps, pure momentum carrying it forward. Then its legs buckled. It crashed into the ground 10 meters from their position, sliding to a stop in a cloud of purple dust. Silence fell over the camp. The only sound was the wind whistling through the crystalline formations and the heavy breathing of the two humans. Jake walked toward the Scorvath's corpse, rifle ready. Claire covered him from behind. The creature didn't move. Its sensory organs had gone dark. Dark blood pooled beneath its shattered head. "It's dead," Jake confirmed. "Claire, help me drag this thing away from camp. We don't want to attract scavengers." Inside the shuttle, the alien crew stared through the viewports. They had just watched 2 humans kill something that was supposed to be unkillable. Veklis felt his understanding of the universe shift fundamentally. The Galactic Council had classified humans as a spacefaring species, granted them limited access to technology and trading routes, but they had not understood what they were welcoming into the galactic community. They had not understood that death worlds didn't just create survivors. They created warriors who looked at the impossible and asked where to set up camp. Tresh pulsed a color that meant profound respect. "Commander Veklis, perhaps we have underestimated our human colleagues. If they can kill a Scorvath with such efficiency, what else are they capable of?" Veklis watched as Jake and Claire used a portable winch to drag the massive corpse away from camp. They worked together seamlessly, anticipating each other's movements. 2 members of a species that had only joined the galactic community 50 cycles ago, doing what entire military units had failed to accomplish. The commander made another decision that would ripple through the Galactic Council. "Tresh, send a priority transmission to Council headquarters. Tell them we have successfully established a base camp on XR749. Tell them the humans have made it possible. And tell them that we need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about Death World species and their capabilities." By the time full darkness fell, the camp was operational. Jake had set up perimeter sensors that would alert them to approaching threats. Claire had assembled the resonance amplifiers, creating a field that made smaller predators uncomfortable. The crew had established sleeping quarters, a command center, and a medical station. Above them, the nightmare sky churned with clouds that glowed faintly from some unknown source of luminescence. The crew gathered in the command center for their first briefing. Veklis stood before a holographic display showing their position in the surrounding territory. The mission parameters were simple in theory. The Galactic Council needed mineral samples from XR749. The planet contained deposits of a rare element called Vextrium that was essential for faster-than-light travel. Current supplies were running low, and this world had the largest known concentration. Previous attempts to establish mining operations had failed catastrophically. 43 survey teams. 217 crew members. All dead. Until now, Veklis explained. We believed that XR749 was simply too hostile for sustained operations. But the humans have demonstrated that survival is possible with proper preparation and tactics. Tomorrow, we begin mapping expeditions. We need to locate the Vextrium deposits and determine if extraction is feasible. Jake studied the holographic map. Commander, these terrain scans show underground tunnel systems throughout this region. Are they natural formations, or something else? A crew member named Draxus, a reptilian from a high-gravity world, manipulated the display. The scans are inconclusive. Some passages appear to be natural. Others show signs of deliberate excavation. We believe there may be indigenous intelligent life on XR749, but we have never made contact. Previous teams vanished before they could investigate. So we might be dealing with hostile natives on top of the nightmare wildlife, Claire said. That's wonderful. Do we have any information about their technology level or capabilities? Draxus shook a scaled head. Nothing reliable. Some of the recovered equipment from previous missions showed signs of tampering that could indicate tool use, but we cannot confirm if the indigenous species are pre-industrial, industrial, or potentially more advanced than us. Jake exchanged glances with Claire. The situation was deteriorating from merely dangerous to potentially catastrophic. Fighting wildlife was one thing. Fighting an unknown intelligent species on their home territory was exponentially more complicated. But the mission remained the same. Find the Vextrium. Determine extraction feasibility. Survive long enough to report back. The briefing continued for another hour, covering logistics, emergency protocols, and evacuation procedures. When it concluded, the crew dispersed to their assigned sleeping areas. Jake and Claire took the first watch, monitoring the perimeter sensors from the command center. Outside, the nightmare world continued its symphony of terrifying sounds. Roars, screeches, the grinding of crystal against crystal, the soundscape of a planet that had evolved to kill. Claire poured herself something that resembled coffee from their ration supplies. You know, when I signed up for xenobiology research, I thought I'd be cataloging peaceful herbivores on garden worlds. Maybe discovering new species of space algae. Instead, I'm on a planet that actively wants me dead, shooting at things the size of buildings. Jake smiled beneath his helmet. That's the recruitment video they should show. Join the Galactic Council fleet, visit exotic nightmare worlds, kill apex predators before breakfast. Do you think we can actually pull this off? Find the Vextrium and get out alive? Jake watched the sensor displays. Small movements registered constantly, creatures prowling just beyond their deterrent field. We've survived worse. Remember the training mission on Titan's southern regions? The ice storms that could strip flesh from bone? The cryogenic predators that hunted in packs? Claire shuddered at the memory. That was brutal. I lost 3 teammates to hypothermia. But at least Titan was a known quantity. We had maps, data, and established protocols. This place is completely unknown. Every step could be our last. Which means we adapt faster than the environment can kill us. That's what humans do, Claire. That's why they wanted us on this mission. We're the crazy species that looks at death worlds and sees opportunities. A sensor alarm chirped. Something large was approaching from the northeast. Jake pulled up the thermal imaging. The signature showed a creature approximately the size of the Scorvath they had killed earlier, but this one moved differently. It crawled low to the ground, using the crystalline formations for cover. It was hunting intelligently. Using tactics, we've got company, Jake transmitted to the sleeping crew. Northeast approach, single large predator. Recommend everyone stay in shelter unless it breaches the perimeter. Veklis responded immediately. Should we prepare the shuttle for emergency departure? Negative. Stay put. Let's see if our deterrent field works. The creature approached to within 50 meters of the perimeter. It stopped, sensory organs twitching. The electromagnetic pulses from Claire's amplifiers created waves of interference that Jake could see on his displays. The creature made a sound of frustration and circled their position, looking for weaknesses. It found none. After 20 minutes of testing, it retreated back into the crystalline forest. Jake exhaled slowly. Field works, for now. We'll need to strengthen it if we're going to be here long term. Claire made notes on her data pad. I can modify the frequency patterns to make it more effective, but we'll need more power cells. I estimate our current setup will last maybe a week before we need to recharge or replace the amplifiers. Then we have a week to find what we came for and figure out extraction logistics. After that, we either resupply or expand our power generation capabilities. The night passed slowly. Jake and Claire rotated watch duty with Draxus, who volunteered despite his obvious fear of the environment. The reptilian warrior had served in the Council fleet for 20 cycles, fought in 3 border conflicts, and earned decorations for valor. But even he admitted that XR-749 tested his courage in ways combat never had. There was something fundamentally terrifying about a world itself being the enemy. Dawn arrived with unexpected beauty. The alien sun rose in shades of amber and violet, painting the crystalline formations in colors that seemed impossible. For a moment, the nightmare world appeared almost peaceful. Then something howled in the distance, and the illusion shattered. XR-749 was awake, and it was hungry. Jake called a morning briefing. The crew assembled in the command center, refreshed by a few hours of rest. Veclis displayed updated mapping data compiled from overnight sensor sweeps. We have identified 3 potential Vextrium deposit sites within 20 kilometers of our position. Site Alpha is closest, approximately 8 kilometers northeast. Site Beta is 12 kilometers west. Site Gamma is 19 kilometers south. I recommend we begin with Site Alpha, establish its viability, and proceed from there. Jake studied the terrain between their camp and Site Alpha. The route would take them through dense crystalline forests and across at least 2 open plains. Both environments presented significant dangers. We'll need 2 teams, one for exploration and sample collection, another for security and camp defense. I volunteer for exploration lead. Claire raised her hand. I'm going with Jake. If we're collecting mineral samples, you'll need someone who can analyze them properly and identify Vextrium concentrations. Veclis nodded. Agreed. I will accompany you as well. This is my mission, my responsibility. Draxus, you will command camp security with a team of 5, maintain defensive positions, and monitor our progress. If we do not return within 12 hours, initiate emergency protocols and evacuate. The exploration team spent an hour preparing. They loaded extra ammunition, power cells for their suits, medical supplies, and scientific equipment. Jake performed weapons checks on everyone's rifles, ensuring they were loaded with armor-piercing rounds. Claire double-checked the portable analyzers and sample containers. Veclis reviewed their communication equipment and emergency beacons. At sunrise plus 2 hours, they departed camp. Jake took point, moving carefully through the crystalline formations. Claire followed, her eyes constantly scanning for biological threats or interesting specimens. Veclis brought up the rear, his mandibles clicking nervously as he processed the sensory overload of being outside their deterrent field. The crystalline forest was dense and disorienting. The formations grew in chaotic patterns, some reaching 20 meters high, others spreading horizontally like frozen waves. The electromagnetic pulses created constant interference with their equipment. Every few minutes, Jake had to stop and recalibrate his navigation system. They moved slowly, carefully, knowing that speed would only get them killed. After 3 kilometers, they encountered their first significant obstacle. A crevasse split the ground, approximately 30 meters wide and impossibly deep. The bottom disappeared into darkness that their lights couldn't penetrate. The only way across was a natural bridge of crystal, narrow and treacherous. Jake tested the bridge's stability by tossing a rock onto it. The crystal held firm. He checked his safety line and started across. The bridge was barely 2 meters wide in places, with drops on either side that could kill them instantly. Halfway across, he heard something, a rhythmic scraping sound coming from the depths of the crevasse. He froze, listening. The sound grew louder. Something was climbing up toward them. Move, he transmitted, now. Everyone across. Don't look down.
Don't stop.
Claire and Veclis followed him at a run. The scraping sound intensified. Jake reached the far side and turned to cover the others. Claire made it across, breathing hard. Veclis was halfway when something emerged from the crevasse. It resembled a massive spider, but its legs were made of the same crystal as the formations around them. Each leg ended in razor-sharp points that pierced the stone as it climbed. Its body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Veclis ran. The crystal spider reached the bridge and started across. Jake aimed his rifle at the bridge itself, calculating angles. He fired 3 shots, targeting the narrowest section.
The crystal splintered, cracked, and gave way.
The spider fell, its legs grasping desperately at the collapsing bridge. It dropped into the darkness, taking half the bridge with it. The sound of its descent echoed for long seconds before fading into silence. Jake knelt beside Veclis, who had collapsed at the edge of the crevasse. The commander's breathing was rapid, his exoskeleton darkened with stress patterns. Claire administered a mild sedative to calm his system. They rested for 10 minutes before continuing. Behind them, the crevasse remained impassable, cutting off their easiest route back to camp. They would have to find another way home, assuming they survived long enough to need one. The crystalline forest eventually opened into one of the plains Veclis had warned about. It stretched for kilometers, covered in the purple vegetation that moved independently of wind. The plants reached toward them as they emerged from the tree line, grasping with tendrils that contained barbs. Jake used his combat knife to clear a path, cutting through the vegetation. The plants released spores when damaged, clouds of purple particles that their suits filtered automatically. Halfway across the plain, Claire stopped. Her scanner was picking up something unusual. Jake, I'm reading massive underground structures directly beneath us. The Vextrium signature is strong, but there's something else. Energy readings that shouldn't be possible from natural formations. I think we found the indigenous species territory. Jake knelt and pressed his hand against the ground. He could feel vibrations, rhythmic and deliberate. Machinery, or something that served a similar purpose. He looked at Veclis. Commander, your call. Do we proceed or retreat? Veclis faced a decision that would define his career and possibly his species' relationship with humanity. The safe choice was retreat. Report the findings. Request military support. Follow protocols that had been established over thousands of cycles. But looking at Jake and Claire, he saw a different path. He saw the possibility of succeeding where others had failed. He saw what humans called courage, and he decided to trust it. We proceed. But carefully. If we encounter the indigenous species, we attempt communication first, violence only as last resort. They continued across the plain. The vibrations grew stronger. After another kilometer, they found what they were looking for. An opening in the ground, perfectly circular, approximately 10 meters in diameter. Stairs carved from crystal descended into darkness. The Vextrium readings from Claire's scanner went off the scale. Site Alpha wasn't just a deposit. It was a mine. Someone or something had been extracting Vextrium from beneath the surface, possibly for centuries. Jake activated his helmet light and started down the stairs. The others followed, their lights pushing back shadows that seemed to resist illumination. The stairway descended for 50 meters before opening into a chamber that defied rational explanation. The space was enormous, carved from solid crystal with precision that no natural process could achieve. And it wasn't empty. Machinery filled the chamber, strange devices that hummed with power, conveyor systems carried chunks of ore toward processing stations. And working the machinery were beings that looked like living crystal themselves, humanoid in basic shape but composed entirely of the same material as the formations above. The indigenous species stopped working and turned toward the intruders. Their bodies refracted light into rainbow patterns. They made sounds like wind chimes, communication in a frequency range that hurt human ears. Jake raised his empty hands, showing he held no weapons. Claire did the same. Veclis stepped forward, his translator device attempting to process the crystalline being's language. The device struggled, producing fragments. Outsiders. Trespassers. Mine. Danger. One of the crystalline beings approached, taller than the others, possibly a leader. It studied them with sensory organs that glowed from within its translucent body. It made more chiming sounds, deliberate and slow. This time, the translator managed better results. Why come here? This place forbidden to soft bodies. Many soft bodies came before. All died. Ground kills. Creatures kill. We do not kill, but we do not stop killing. Why you different? Jake spoke slowly, hoping the crystalline being could understand. We came for the glowing stone, the Vextrium. We need it for our ships, to travel between stars. We do not want to take everything. Just enough to continue our journey. We can trade. We can offer things you might need. The crystalline being's glow intensified. Glowing stone is our life, our power, our purpose. We mine it for our ships too. We travel between stars long before soft bodies learned fire. But we cannot leave this world. It produces the glowing stone. We are trapped by our need. Claire's mind raced. She understood now. These beings were minors like humans, but they were bound to this nightmare world because it was the only source of their power. They couldn't abandon it without losing everything. She spoke carefully. What if we could help you? Find other sources of the glowing stone? Free you from this world? The crystalline beings chiming became agitated. Other beings of the council said same thing. They lied. They took glowing stone and never returned. Left us here. Betrayed trust. Why should we believe you? Veclis stepped forward, his courage overriding his fear. Because humans are different. They come from a death world like this one. They understand survival. They understand keeping promises, because breaking promises means death on worlds that forgive nothing. I cannot speak for all council species, but I can speak for these humans. They will not betray you. The crystalline being studied them for long moments. Then it made a decision.
It gestured toward deeper chambers. Come.
See what we have, mind. See what we can trade. But if you betray us like others, this world will have more soft body bones to add to its collection. They followed the crystalline being deeper into the mine. The chambers opened into vast caverns filled with processed vextrium, enough to power human ships for decades, enough to ensure the Galactic Council's future, but also enough to make them understand the cost. These beings had been mining for possibly thousands of years, trapped on a nightmare world, abandoned by species who took what they needed and never looked back. Jake made a promise that would change everything. We will come back. We will find other sources of vextrium in the galaxy, and we will free you from this place. That's not a council promise. That's a human promise. And where I come from, breaking your word is worse than death. The crystalline being's glow shifted to a color that might have been hope. Then we have agreement. Take what you need, but remember what you promised. We will wait. We have waited this long. We can wait longer. But soft bodies break promises too many times, and even patient species learn anger. They collected samples, enough to prove the deposit's viability and conduct proper analysis. The crystalline beings provided them with processed vextrium, gifts given in hope rather than trade. As they prepared to leave, the leader being provided them with something unexpected, a map of the safest route back to camp, carved into a crystal tablet. The indigenous species had been watching them since they landed. They knew where the camp was. They could have attacked at any time. But they had chosen to wait, to observe, to hope that maybe this time would be different. The journey back was faster with the map. The crystalline beings had marked safe passages through the crystalline forests, routes that avoided the worst predators and most treacherous terrain. They reached camp as the alien sun set, exhausted but victorious. The crew gathered to hear their report, and Veclis told them everything.
The indigenous species, the vextrium deposits.
The promise Jake had made. Draxus spoke what everyone was thinking. Can we keep that promise? Finding other vextrium sources in the galaxy could take years, maybe centuries. And humans are new to the council. Why would established species listen to their demands? Jake set down his rifle and looked at each crew member. Because if we don't keep that promise, then we prove those crystalline beings right. We prove that intelligent species are just sophisticated predators, taking what they need and abandoning those who can't fight back. Earth taught humanity a lot of lessons. One of them is that you honor your agreements, or you die alone. The galaxy is too big and too dangerous for species to survive without trust. We either build that trust, or we deserve every nightmare that comes for us. Claire added her voice. Plus, we have leverage now. We know where the largest vextrium deposit in known space is located. We can make the council listen. They need this resource. They'll agree to terms that include helping the crystalline beings. It's just politics and resource management. Humans have been doing that since before we built cities. Veclis felt pride swell in his thorax. The humans were teaching his crew something the Galactic Council had forgotten. That survival wasn't just about taking. It was about building relationships, honoring agreements, and understanding that the galaxy was full of species trying to make their way through an indifferent universe. If they couldn't help each other, then what was the point of having a galactic community at all? That night, as the crew rested, Jake stood watch alone. The nightmare world hummed around him. Predators prowled beyond the perimeters. The crystalline formations pulsed their electromagnetic songs. Above, stars glittered in patterns that reminded him of home. Earth was 15 light-years away, a blue marble in the darkness. But the lessons learned there applied everywhere. Survive. Adapt. Honor your word. Build something worth protecting. His communication device chirped. Claire's voice came through. Can't sleep? Just thinking. This world, these crystalline beings, the whole situation. Makes you realize how much we take for granted. Like the fact that our homeworld actively tried to kill us for millions of years, and somehow that prepared us to help species on other death worlds. Exactly like that. Maybe that's humanity's role in the galaxy. Not conquerors, not traitors, but survivors who understand what it means to face the impossible and find a way through. That's very philosophical for someone who killed a Scorvath with an illegal explosive device earlier today. Jake laughed. Yeah, well, philosophy is easier when you're not being charged by a 15-meter nightmare creature, but the point stands. We're here because Earth made us tough enough to be here. We might as well use that toughness for something good, the night continued. Stars wheeled overhead. The nightmare world sang its deadly song. But inside the camp, the crew of explorers from a dozen species slept peacefully, protected by deterrent fields and human stubbornness. Tomorrow they would begin detailed surveys. They would map the mine complexes. They would negotiate terms with the crystalline beings. They would start the long process of turning a nightmare world into a source of hope rather than terror. And, somewhere in the darkness, the crystalline beings watched and waited. They had seen soft-body species come and go. They had seen promises made and broken. But maybe, just maybe, these humans were different. Maybe their death world origins made them understand the value of keeping your word when the universe gave you every excuse to break it. Maybe Earth had produced something the galaxy desperately needed. Not warriors or scientists or explorers, but people who looked at nightmares and asked where to set up camp. People who made promises and meant them. People who understood that sometimes the hardest part of survival wasn't fighting the monsters outside. It was staying human, staying honorable. When everything around you said that honor was a luxury you couldn't afford. Jake Morrison and his crew were about to prove that honor wasn't a luxury. It was the foundation of everything worth building, even on a world designed to destroy hope, especially on such a world. The first week on XR7409 established patterns that would define the entire operation. Each morning, Jake led exploration teams deeper into the mine complexes, building relationships with the crystalline beings whose language they were slowly learning to understand. Each evening, Claire compiled data on Vextrium deposits, biological specimens, and the complex ecosystem that made the planet so deadly. Each night, Veclis sent reports to the Galactic Council, each one pushing harder for support and resources to honor the promise made. The crystalline beings, who called themselves the Luminar Collective, opened more of their territory to the explorers. They showed them caverns filled with ancient artwork, crystalline sculptures that refracted light into stories about their history. The Luminar had once been a spacefaring civilization, traveling the galaxy freely. Then they discovered XR749 and its vast Vextrium deposits. They established mining operations, but something went wrong. The planet's unique properties began affecting their physiology. Over generations, they became dependent on the electromagnetic pulses the crystals produced. They could no longer survive away from the planet for extended periods. They had become prisoners of their own success. Jake listened to these stories through improved translation devices that Tresh had developed. The jellyfish-like being had discovered that telepathic communication could bridge the gap between crystalline frequencies and biological audio processing. Through Tresh, the Luminar elder named Crystal Voice that echoes through stone told them everything. We tried to leave many times. Ships were built, expeditions launched, but after 50 solar rotations away from XR749, our people began to fade. The crystalline structure of our bodies lost cohesion. We dimmed. We shattered. We died. So we returned. We accepted our fate. We became nothing more than miners for species who could leave, who could be free. We traded our freedom for survival, and we learned to hate every soft-body species that came here, took what they needed, and flew away without looking back. Jake sat on a crystalline outcropping, his suit's environmental systems working overtime to manage the heat of the deep caverns. Why help us then? Why show us all this? Why not just let the planet kill us like it did the others? Crystal Voice pulsed with colors that Tresh translated as bitter amusement. Because you did something no other soft body ever did. You asked where to set up camp. Not give us your resources. Not, we will compensate you fairly. Not, this is council property now. You looked at this death world and saw a place to live. That is not the action of a species that came to exploit. That is the action of a species that came to survive. We understand survival. So we watched. And when you killed the Scorvath, when you defended your position instead of fleeing, when you made it through the crystalline forests without losing anyone, we understood. You're a death world species like us. Different origin. Different form, but same core. Same stubbornness, same refusal to let the universe win. Claire joined the conversation. She had been analyzing Luminar physiology with their permission. The data was fascinating and heartbreaking. Their cellular structure required regular exposure to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Without it, cellular bonds weakened and collapsed. But she had found something in the data. A possible solution. Crystal Voice, what if the problem isn't that you need the planet's electromagnetic pulses, but that you need any electromagnetic pulses? What if we could replicate the frequency artificially? The Luminar Elders' glow dimmed to near darkness. Many tried. All failed. The frequency is too complex, too variable. Technology cannot replicate what this planet produces naturally. We are bound here forever. Claire shook her head. Earth technology couldn't. But humans are really, really good at solving problems everyone else thinks are impossible. That's kind of our specialty. Give me time. Let me study the frequencies more. Let me understand the exact parameters. I can't promise success, but I can promise I'll try, until there's nothing left to try. The next 3 weeks became a blur of activity. Claire built a laboratory in the deepest caverns where the frequencies were strongest. She recorded every variation, every pattern, every harmonic. Jake continued exploration and security operations, mapping the surface and eliminating threats that got too close to their operations. Veklis coordinated with the Galactic Council, fighting bureaucratic battles across light years of distance. The crew worked around the clock, driven by purpose and the knowledge that they were attempting something unprecedented. Draxus proved invaluable during this period. His high-gravity world upbringing made him better equipped than most to handle XR-749's harsh conditions. He led security teams through the most dangerous regions, clearing routes and establishing safe zones. Under his command, the crew suffered 0 casualties despite multiple encounters with apex predators. He learned from Jake's tactics, adapted them to his own physiology and capabilities, and became the bridge between human ruthless efficiency and alien caution. During the 4th week, disaster nearly struck. A massive seismic event, common on XR-749, triggered a cascade of tunnel collapses. Jake's team was deep in the mine when the ground started shaking. Crystal formations shattered, cavern ceilings fractured. The Luminar miners knew what to do. They had survived countless quakes, but the soft-body explorers were vulnerable. "Move!" Jake shouted, grabbing Claire and pulling her toward the main shaft. "Veklis, get your people out now!" But Tresh was trapped under a fallen crystal beam, their translucent body pierced by crystalline shards. Draxus attempted to lift the beam, but even his considerable strength wasn't enough. The cavern continued collapsing around them. They had seconds, maybe less. Jake made a decision that would haunt him. He pulled an emergency explosive charge from his pack, the kind meant for breaching reinforced doors or creating emergency exits. He placed it against the base of the crystal beam, set a 3-second timer, and grabbed Draxus. "Everyone down. Cover your heads." The explosion was controlled but violent. The crystal beam shattered into hundreds of pieces. Jake and Draxus pulled Tresh free and ran for the shaft entrance. Behind them, the cavern collapsed completely, filling with rubble and dust. They made it to the main shaft as the final support beams gave way. The entire section of mine was lost, kilometers of tunnels and caverns gone in moments. Tresh was badly injured. Crystalline shards had pierced their outer membrane, and they were losing the fluids that sustained their body. Claire immediately began emergency medical procedures, using their limited knowledge of Tresh's species biology. It took 3 hours of desperate work, but Tresh stabilized. They would survive, though recovery would take weeks. That evening, Crystal Voice found Jake standing at the cave entrance, watching the sunset. The human shoulders were tight with stress. The Luminar Elder pulsed with warmth. "You saved one of your crew at great risk. That explosive could have killed you all. Why not leave the injured one and ensure your own survival?" Jake's voice was flat. "Because on Earth we learned that leaving people behind makes you something less than human. We survive together or not at all. That's not just a nice philosophy." That's what worked. Species that abandoned their weak died out. Species that protected each other made it through ice ages and plagues and everything else the planet threw at us. Crystal Voice pulsed with understanding. "This is why your promise matters to us. This is why we believe you will return. Not because you are powerful or because you have superior technology, but because you understand that sometimes survival means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. This is not common in the galaxy, Human Jake. Most species are pragmatic."
Logical. They calculate costs and benefits.
"But you calculate differently. You include intangibles."
Honor.
Promise-keeping. These have no measurable value, yet you treat them as essential. Jake finally turned to face the Luminar Elder. On Earth, those intangibles were the only thing that kept us from eating each other when food was scarce. They became our survival strategy. Maybe that makes us weird in galactic terms, but it's what we are. And I meant what I said. We're going to find a way to free your people. Not because it benefits humans, but because it's the right thing to do, and sometimes that's reason enough. By the end of the second month, Claire had a breakthrough. She had been working with luminar crystal samples, analyzing their structure at the molecular level. The key wasn't replicating the planet's natural frequencies. The key was understanding that luminar physiology had adapted to use those frequencies to generate its own internal electromagnetic field. What they needed wasn't external stimulation. They needed a catalyst that would allow their bodies to generate the field independently. She found it in a rare isotope of vextrium, one that existed in minute quantities even in the richest deposits. When properly refined and introduced to luminar crystalline structure, it acted as a permanent frequency generator. The luminar body would become self-sustaining, capable of producing its own electromagnetic field indefinitely. The theory was elegant. Testing it was terrifying. No luminar wanted to be the first to try. The possibility of death was real and horrifying. But, eventually, a young luminar named Faceit That Catches Dawn volunteered. She was one of the miners who had shown them the deepest caverns, who had saved Jake's team during the collapse by guiding them to safety. She was brave in ways that transcended species. The procedure took 6 hours. Claire carefully introduced the refined isotope into Faceit's crystalline matrix, monitoring every change in electromagnetic signature. The luminar's glow fluctuated wildly at first, dimming to almost nothing, then flaring so bright it hurt to look directly. Her body structure shifted, molecular bonds realigning to accommodate the internal frequency generator. For 10 terrifying minutes, she went completely dark and still. Claire thought she had killed her. Then Faceit began to glow again. But it was different. The light came from within, steady and strong, independent of the cavern's natural frequencies. She moved, testing her limbs. She spoke, her chime-like voice clear and resonant. She was alive. She was transformed. She was free. Crystal Voice approached Faceit with reverence. The young luminar stood before the elder, glowing with internal light that had nothing to do with external stimulus. The elder made sounds that the translator struggled to process. They were too laden with emotion, too complex for simple linguistic conversion. But the meaning was clear. Hope. After centuries of captivity, there was finally hope. The next weeks were spent refining the procedure and treating volunteer luminar. Not everyone chose transformation. Some preferred to remain bound to XR749, finding comfort in the familiar patterns of their existence. But many took the chance. Dozens, then hundreds. The luminar collective was splitting into 2 groups. Those who would remain as guardians of the planet and its vextrium resources. Those who would leave to reclaim their species' spacefaring heritage. During this period, Veclis received a transmission from the Galactic Council. They were sending a delegation to assess the operation and determine next steps. This could be validation of everything they had accomplished, or it could be political maneuvering to take credit and marginalize the humans. Veclis prepared his crew for either possibility. Jake prepared for the worst. The delegation arrived in a massive council cruiser, the kind that could reduce a planet to slag if necessary. Jake watched it descend through the churning atmosphere, weapon systems active and shields at maximum. They weren't taking chances with XR749. The ship landed 2 kilometers from the camp, and a party of 10 officials disembarked. The lead official was a Jarn like Veclis, but older and decorated with more honors. Her name was Admiral Cressva, and she commanded the entire Council exploration fleet. She surveyed the camp with evident surprise. When her mandibles began clicking, Veclis knew they were in for a difficult conversation. Commander Veclis, your reports have been extremely difficult to believe. You claim to have established not just a camp but a functioning operation on a Death World Category 9. You claim to have made contact with indigenous intelligent species that previous missions couldn't find or communicate with. You claim to have developed a medical procedure that solves a problem that has trapped an entire species for centuries. These claims are extraordinary. I have come to verify them personally. Jake stepped forward. Admiral, everything Commander Veclis reported is accurate. We can provide evidence, documentation, and testimony from the Luminar themselves. They're eager to meet Council officials, though I should warn you they have some strong feelings about previous Council missions that came here. Cressva turned her full attention to Jake. You are the human? Morrison, yes? You killed a Scorvath with improvised explosives. You established deterrent fields using electromagnetic principles. You made promises to indigenous species without council authorization. Human Morrison, do you understand that your actions could have created a diplomatic incident? That promising council resources without proper authority is a serious violation of protocols? Jake's voice remained calm. Admiral, with respect, I didn't promise council resources. I promised human resources. I specifically made that distinction. When the Luminar are ready to engage with the larger galaxy, they'll do so on their own terms. My promise was that humans would help them find other Vextrium sources. That's a human commitment, not a council one. Though I hope the council will join that effort because it's the right thing to do and because the Luminar deserve better than abandonment. The Admiral's mandibles froze. Then she made a sound that might have been laughter. You are either very brave or very foolish, Human Morrison. Possibly both. Show me everything. I want to see the camp. The mine. The Luminar. The transformed individuals. And I want to understand how a species that joined the Council only 50 cycles ago managed to accomplish what established species could not. The tour took 6 hours. Jake and Claire showed Admiral Kresva every aspect of their operation. The deterrent fields that kept predators away, the relationships built with the Luminar through patience and respect, the medical breakthrough that offered freedom to a trapped species, the mining operation that produced more Vextrium than any previous mission without exploitation. Everything was documented, recorded, and impossible to deny. In the deepest caverns, Crystal Voice met the Admiral directly. The Luminar Elder glowed with controlled intensity as they spoke through Tresh's translation. Admiral of the Council, your species and others came here many times. You took our work. You took our Vextrium. You promised fair trade. You left us trapped and alone. Now humans come.
They kill our predators. They honor their word.
They free my people from bondage. Why should we trust the Council ever again?
Kresova faced the accusation directly. Because the Council is not a monolithic entity. It is a collection of species trying to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Some species within the Council have acted dishonorably. This is true. But if you judge all species by the actions of a few, you perpetuate cycles of distrust that benefit no one. The humans have shown you that different approaches are possible. Perhaps they can show the rest of the Council as well, if you are willing to give us another chance. Crystal Voice pulsed with consideration. Then we will share terms. The Luminar Collective will provide Vextrium to the Council. But not as slaves, not as trapped miners, as partners. We will control extraction. We will set prices. We will demand that the Council helps us find other Vextrium sources in the galaxy. And we will hold humans as guarantors of this agreement. If the Council breaks faith again, humanity will know. And humanity will remember. That is our price for renewed relationship. Admiral Kresova made the clicking sound that indicated deep thought. Then she did something unprecedented. She lowered herself to the cavern floor in a gesture of respect that was significant for her species. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I accept these terms. I cannot guarantee that all species will honor them, but I will enforce them personally, and I agree that humanity should serve as guarantors. They have proven trustworthy in ways that shame the rest of us.